In Thailand and across Southeast Asia, some roads are avoided not because they're dangerous or damaged, but because they're haunted. Local drivers believe certain paths don't lead to anything physical, but instead drift through thin spaces between the living and the dead. At the heart of these beliefs lies something deceptively simple: pa sam si, or three-colored cloth, usually in the color of red, yellow, and green. These are not just decorations, they are spiritual offerings, often tied around sacred trees, spirit poles, or roadside shrines. To disturb one is to actually break a silent agreement with the spirits that guard them. Most locals would rather crash their car than actually mess with Pa Sam Si. This story begins with a shortcut, the shortcut that is suggested by a GPS, deep in the countryside of Thailand, late at night, and of course, one simple mistake. The story starts at around 12:30 a.m. at night. The countryside is silent. Crickets buzz outside and mist clings to the edge of the road. Kin is driving his old Honda Jazz, and Pat, who is Kin's friend, is in the passenger seat, half asleep from a few too many drinks at the wedding that have just left. While they were driving, Google Maps suddenly sent them a notification. Pat looks at the screen and say, "Hey, it says there's a shortcut, and it saves 20 minutes. Ken, who was driving at the time, also looked at the screen. He noticed that it was an unnamed road, but the road that they're driving in right now, it still looks alright, so they decided to try the shortcut that was suggested by the GPS. The car turns off the main highway into a darker, narrower road. No lights, just tall trees rising on either side like pillars. As they were driving longer and longer, the road quickly changes from concrete to uneven asphalt. It twists and turns deeper into the forest. Suddenly, they receive a notification from Google to go straight for 12 kilometers. At that moment, a breeze blows, but only inside the car. Outside, the air seems unnaturally still. A few kilometers into the drive, Ken stops the car so they can relieve themselves. Pat wanders into the bush while Ken stretches his legs behind the car. Suddenly, Pat calls out to Ken to come and check something out. He had found a large tamarind tree wrapped with layers of faded pasamsi, or the three-colored cloth, in the color of red, yellow, and green. It was tied around the trunk of a tree in a thick loops. Small offering sits at the base of the pasamsi, which includes a Fanta bottle, an incense stubs, as well as a decayed garland. Pat tugs on one of the cloth loops, half as a joke. Ken immediately snaps. He told Pat not to mess with that, because that is sacred. Pat chuckles and replied that it's just a ribbon, nothing too serious. He pulls one end loose and let it drop down to the ground. Suddenly, a gust of wind actually hits them both, even though the trees around them are perfectly still. And Ken suddenly feels nauseous, and they decided to get back into the car. The forest now seems darker, and the crickets mysteriously have stopped crying. And inside the car, Google still tells them to go straight for 12 more kilometers. 10 minutes later, the road seems to narrow down and the trees crowd closer. Visibility drops as fog pulls alongside the roadside. The darkness ahead feels thicker than before. Up ahead, a figure appears in the beams of the headlights. He stands still at the edge of the road like a statue. The figure is a monk, with his hat bowed down, saffron robe flowing, bare feet sunk into the wet ground. Ken begins to slow down the car. His throat feels tight. "That's a monk," he mutters. The road rolls forward slowly. The headlights pass over the monk's face, but it's obscured by the shadow. His skin looks gray, almost translucent, and the mud at his feet seems too dark, too thick, and the mud spreads outward from him like a stain. Pat suddenly speaks out. very firmly, "Don't stop, just go." As they drive past, Ken sneaks a peek into the rearview mirror, and the monk is now standing in the middle of the road, perfectly still, facing their car, but his head is still looking at the ground. The forest becomes a tunnel of repetition. They drive past the same pothole with a shattered beer bottle beside it. Then another 200 meters, the same pothole they saw, with the same bottle and the same twisted roadside sign with faded Thai script to tell them to slow down and turn sharp. Pat leans forward, staring at the GPS, and he noticed that they already passed that point. Ken grits his teeth. How far are we now? Pat looks down at the GPS and saw that it's still 12 kilometers. He checks the time and it's 1:12 a.m. in the morning. They drive in silence for what feels like 20 minutes, and then they decided to check the clock again. But the clock, it's still 1:12 a.m. in the morning. He smacks the dashboard. No change. His watch shows the same time. As the air grows cold, moisture creeps in through the vents. Ahead, they saw a woman, knees at the shoulder of the road, facing away from them. She wears white traditional robes and her hair is long and tangled. Ken instinctively slows down the car. But he whispers this time, "Don't stop and don't look at her." And as they pass, the woman lifts her face slowly, impossibly slowly, as though her bones are grinding. Her eyes are milky, and her mouth, they hangs open, and her skin is pale and bloated. It was as if she just drowned in a river. Her gaze does not follow them, but her mouth, that begins to move, slyly mouthing something over and over again. Pat turns to look at Ken and saw that his friend who was driving the car is sweating and shaking. As the chill inside the car becomes almost unbearable now, it was as if the air itself thickens with something unseen. Ken rubs his hands together, and foggy breath curling in the dim of light of the dashboard. And then comes a sound, soft, rhythmic, and unmistakably human. The sound was exhale and inhale, and exhale and inhale. It was as if someone was in the car with them, breathing in and out, but the sound is not coming from either of them. Ken slowly raises his eyes to the rearview mirror just behind them. Seated in the middle of the backseat, he saw a face, gray, bloated, and completely still. The eye sockets are black hollows and the lips are cracked, slightly parted like the body had drowned not long ago. At that moment, Ken lets out a strangled sound and jerks the wheel. The car rears slightly before he gains control, and Pat snaps upright. What the hell was that? He was surprised. They both spin around and look at the backseat, but saw that it was empty. Ken swipes his trembling hand across the fog mirror, and he saw the condensation clears, and what he saw sends chills down his spine. On the window, he saw a word written in Thai, "Khong Gu," which translates to "It's mine." Pat stares at the message, unable to speak. Just as they began to process what they saw, the car radio, previously it was off, suddenly turned open with static sound, and without anyone touching it, it switches channels, landing on a station playing soft monk chanting. The melody is familiar and peaceful at first, a typical evening Buddhist chant that you normally hear in a temple or a funeral. Pat reaches for the dial. Confused, he asks Ken if he turned the radio on, and Ken shakes his head because he tries to power it off, but the switch, it doesn't respond. And then the chanting begins to slow down, distort, and the harmonious rhythm shifts. It starts to play backward, voices overlapping like tape warping in an old cassette tape. What was once a secret sound, now it sounds very unnatural, groaning and stretching. Ken taps the power button repeatedly while screaming at Pat to turn it off. The static quiets, and then a new voice cuts through. This time it was a female voice, low, breathy, and not a part of the chant. She said, "Hong Gu," which still translates to "it's mine." And suddenly, silence returns. Neither man touches the radio again. The trees thin, slightly ahead, giving way to a long stretch of road. In the headlights, a human figure appears, standing perfectly still in the middle of the lane. Ken squints. The figure wears jeans, a white button-up shirt with one sleeve torn, just like Pat. The man on the road raises his arm, slowly, hand opened, almost as if it was to greet the car. Ken's grip on the wheel tightens. He doesn't breathe. And besides him, the real Pat doesn't blink. He just whispers, "Don't look at him. Don't even blink." Ken's drive ahead, straight. As the headlights pass the doppelganger, the figure turns its head, just enough for Ken to glimpse at his face. It was Pat's face, but empty, lifeless. And the eyes, they are glassy, too wide, and the smile was very unnatural. As they pass, they notice a rotten smell started to flood in the cabin of the car. The stench of something long dead, wet and buried. Without warning, the car jerks hard. A loud thump thunders beneath them as if they have hit something large. Ken slams the brake and they both jolt forward in their seats. In the car, silence grows. No one was talking anything. No animals fleeing, no echoes, just the sound of their panicked breath. Pat grabs the flashlight from the glove compartment and steps out. The beam cuts through the mist as he scans behind them. Nobody, no broken branches, but something is wrong. On the road behind them, there's a long black smear, slick and unnatural. The light reveals something worse. 5 faint handprints on the dirt, as if someone had been growling towards the car. Pat backs away. "There's nothing there," he says, though his voice betrays him. Ken feels it too. The car is heavier. It groans when he shifts in his seat, as if something is now inside, somewhere that he can see. As they take a turn on the road, the trees briefly open to reveal a small clearing. There, softly glowing in the dark, stands a roadside shrine. It's made out of old wood, its paint chipped and worn. Several sticks of incense burn fresh, their smoke curling unnaturally still in the air. Ken slows down the car to stop, and the shrine is wrapped in 2 strands of pasamsi. Only 2, not 3. Pat opens the glove box again. The missing strips of cloth, the one that he had tucked loose hours ago, is lying in the compartment of the car. At the time, he remembered that he didn't actually bring it into the car, let alone even putting it into the glove box of the car. They exchange look. It's not spoken, but they know. They have reached the moment that they cannot avoid any longer. They decided to step out of the car, barefoot now, out of respect. The earth beneath them is damp and warm, pulsing almost as if it was breathing. Pat kneels at the shrine. Ken bows low beside him, hands pressed tightly together. Ken speaks first. "They didn't know. They were careless and they're sorry, so please let them go," he begged. Pat quietly ties the cloth back around the wooden post of the shrine, and the moment the knot tightens, a sudden breeze sweeps through the clearing. The candles flicker, nearly dying, but then they stabilize. Behind them, the sound of crickets resumes. Google's voice speaks. emotionless but somehow softer. Rerouting, turn left. They decided to turn, and suddenly they saw a concrete road cuts through the tree. It glows faintly, as if it had been lit by something buried under the ground. They drive in complete silence now. Neither looks out the window and neither checks the clock. The forest slowly thins, and the trees, they grow shorter. The air lightens, and eventually they come back onto the main road with smooth concrete. A green sign overhead, Bangkok, 78 kilometers away. A gas station appears ahead. They decided to pull in with hands trembling and neck sore. Ken checks the time and he saw it was 5:27 a.m. At a convenience store, an elderly man behind the counter noticed the pale, shaken face. He decided to ask the two boys if they had just came back from the back road. Ken nods, barely able to speak. The old man exhaled. That road, it doesn't always let people go. He pauses and looks them over and adds, and when it does, they are never quite the same. Both of the boys decided to pay and nod at the old man and walk back to the car. As the car pulls onto the highway, dawn breaks. The sun begins to rise, and in the rearview mirror, just for a second, there's a face. Someone sitting silently at the back seat, watching, and then that person is gone. Fade to black. Now that's the end of the story. You see, in Thai folklore, not all spirits are evil, but all spirits demand respect. The Pasamsi, those red, yellow, and green stripes, are more than just offerings actually. They are boundaries, warnings, and promises. It's said that when someone disturbs a cloth tied to the sacred tree, they invite the guardian spirits to follow, not to kill, but to reclaim what was theirs. Sometimes they just want peace. Sometimes they want an object back, but sometimes they want to claim a person with them. So the next time your GPS suggests a shortcut in the middle of the night, ask yourself, what road are you driving on right now? And who might be waiting just outside of the window of your car for you to get out of the car so they can go home with you?